Hello. It's Elizabeth Busby here, the co-director of programs for the Theology of the Body Institute. Today we are going to be talking about cultivating a culture of quiet in your life. So I have a podcast for people discerning marriage where I interview other people who have good things to say to people discerning marriage. And I had my colleague Bill Donahue on this podcast to talk about a topic called original solitude. So this topic, original solitude, is something discussed by John Paul II in Theology of the Body. And it is a very little known or little discussed, I guess, topic in TOB. And I actually had no idea that it existed. When I discovered Theology of the Body, I was in college, very excited, pumped about it, read a bunch of books about TOB, but never actually read the text of Theology of the Body. And then I graduated college and I went through that horrible breakup and found myself very begrudgingly single with no prospects on the horizon. And it was at that time, coincidentally, this was not like a causation thing, but at that same time, I started actually reading the text of Theology of the Body in a study group with some other young adults, and I discovered this idea of original solitude that John Paul talks about, and I was like, oh, I'm single. I am in solitude. What do you have to say about this, buddy? And so we dived into it, JB2 and I, his texted me, and I started reading it about it and just like letting it inform my heart and my mind, and I was like, this is a gold mine for people who are single, who are longing to be married. So I had Bill on to talk about it. And one of the things he talked about in this episode that I want to kind of expound upon with you is the idea of having this culture of quiet in your life. As a mom of two really young kids, I could tell you that marriage is really beautiful, parenthood is very beautiful, but it is not often very quiet. And so I think that it is really helpful when you're discerning marriage to cultivate quiet and to figure out how to access that place of quiet in your heart so that when your life is a lot louder and more chaotic, you have that place to go back to, right? Obviously, people in your vocation or the vocation of marriage, people who are called to celibacy get lots of quiet, I'm sure. But people who are called to marriage need the quiet. We crave the quiet, but cultivating quiet is a lot harder. So I want to help kind of do you a favor and encourage you to cultivate that in advance. So I have some tips for cultivating that culture of quiet. I feel like I'm just going to make myself say this like 15,000 times, but it is a very trippy thing to say, cultivating a culture of quiet. Anyways, it was Bill Donahue's language, so I'm using it, but it is a tongue twister. Okay, the first thing to do to cultivate this culture of quiet in your life is to have a prayer life. The root, the cause, everything at its base in this culture of quiet, the whole reason why you're doing it is an opportunity to encounter God. So when I think about quiet and having a culture of quiet, I think about that story in the Old Testament. I think it was Elijah. And he was in the rock and he was listening for God. And there was this earthquake and there was this thunderstorm and all these other things that happened. I should probably have memorized the scripture before I started talking to you about it, but basically, you know what I mean. Maybe you don't. Elijah, looking for God, lots of storms. He wasn't there. And then it says he came in this still small voice. If Elijah had not been quiet, he probably would have missed him, right? And that's how the Lord comes to us so often, in this still small voice. And we want to have quiet, a space of quiet in our lives and in our hearts so that we encounter him. So first of all, you need time alone with God in order to encounter him, right? Of course, the Lord can speak to you through other people, out in the world, out in nature, through the barista at Starbucks who gives you your drink for free. The Lord can speak in lots of ways that are not quiet, but he most often will speak to you in that place of quiet. So carving out time in your life to encounter him in prayer is so important. And recognizing that prayer, this is from the Church Fathers, prayer properly understood is nothing other than becoming a longing for God, right? So often we think prayer is like memorizing all this stuff or saying all these memorized things or doing this prescribed whatever formula. But the reality is prayer is just allowing your longing to be something that you have the courage to feel and then letting that longing draw you into God, right? Because that's what you're really longing for. You become that longing for God. So cultivating that space where you're just raw in your longing, raw in your ache, raw in your desire, and then you let the Lord encounter you in that space. But that takes time and patience and practice. So start with 5 minutes. Next week, do 10, and the week after, do 15. Keep doing that until you're up to 30 minutes a day. When you are in a place, in a season where you're discerning marriage, probably most of you have time to cultivate that. So I'd encourage you to cultivate that space now. Set your phone timer for 5 minutes and just have that time carved out with the Lord. And then next week, do 10, next week, 15. Keep going until you have 30 minutes every day where you're just in that quiet with the Lord. Okay. The second thing to do is try to go to daily mass a few times a week. I say that for multiple reasons. One, mass is awesome. And you can get the Eucharist there. You encounter the Eucharist there. You receive the Eucharist there. You receive the Eucharist there, which is powerful and beautiful. And the grace of that is so important. But there's another benefit of daily mass, and that is that it is silent. It is very rare for people to have singing at daily mass. Sometimes there's singing. Most of the time, there's not. And so the liturgy calls for spaces of quiet, but so often in our church now, we've lost those spaces of quiet in the liturgy. So you get this opportunity to encounter silence in the liturgy in daily mass in a powerful way. Obviously, go to Sunday Mass too. But if you're in a season where you have time, go to daily Mass and press into those spaces of silence. And if you're uncomfortable with them, if you don't know what to do with them, that's a perfect place to start wrestling through that. Why? What's coming to mind? What are you thinking about? How do you work through that so that you can have that silence in your heart, right? And then eventually in your life. So there we go. The next thing I want to say to cultivate this culture of quiet is surround yourself with beauty, right? So this is going to look different no matter who you are. Beauty is beauty, but people encounter specific beauties in different ways. So for me, this is like a candle, and I have a prayer chair with some beautiful religious depictions and icons and things that are pretty to look at. I love fresh flowers. I probably sound like the quintessential woman right now, but I have all of these things that I really love, and that environment helps me to still. I also really like classical music, and I have my dad's records from when he was a kid, and I have a record player, and so I'll put like a vinyl record on with some Tchaikovsky, and that is the sort of thing that like helps me breathe deeper. And to cultivate that quiet. For my husband, he would much rather have 20 minutes to go on a walk, right? And to be outside and to see something in nature. And he's much more inclined to find beauty in those spaces. And so that's what he would like to do to cultivate that culture of quiet, right? Go out in nature and be on a walk and find something beautiful. We live in a really beautiful part of the country now. And so there's like a creek across the street and some trees and woods in our backyard. When we lived in a concrete village, we would walk around our neighborhood of townhouses and look at the patches of grass, but like beauty, right? There's beauty everywhere. You can find it anywhere. So figure out what speaks to your heart, what beauty speaks to your heart, and intentionally work that into your day, because the encounter with beauty will naturally still you and will naturally allow for spaces of quiet in your life. The next thing, and this feels weird because you're watching me on YouTube, but take a break from social media. I had the most powerful encounter earlier this year with this. I always hated it when people on Instagram would be like, get off of Instagram, I'm doing an Instagram fast, D. And I'd always be like, no, I don't want to do that. But I had this beautiful encounter in confession and working through a bunch of stuff, and was like, you know what? I need to do it. I was literally praying my penance after my confession, and I was like, I don't know where I got this idea. It was probably the Lord. I was like, I am going to delete Instagram, and I'm not going to look at Instagram, and I'm not going to look at any of my blogs or any of my YouTube videos or anything like that until I've read the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I deleted Instagram and YouTube off my phone and downloaded a library app. And this is where I kind of confessed to the internet that I hadn't read it before. That's a little embarrassing. Maybe not for you. It was embarrassing for me. But I was like, I should have read this book. Lots of people in my life thought I'd read it, including my husband. I'd never read it.
You lied to your husband?
I did not lie to my husband. I just like left it out. He never asked me. He just assumed I'd read it. And anyways, so I deleted social media apps. I put on a library app, immediately downloaded Fellowship of the Ring. Is that the first one?
Yes.
Great. And started reading it. Those books are really good. So I read it a lot faster than I thought I would, all 3 of them. But it was really great because there's beauty in those books, right? And books move a lot slower. The intake of books moves a lot slower than social media intake in your brain, right? So I found my brain slowing down. Anytime I reached for my phone to get on social media, my apps were gone. So I just opened my library app and started reading this book. And it had this incredibly profound impact on my interior life. So even if you choose not to try to read a really intense trilogy instead of being on social media, I still encourage you to take a social media break. I think it could be helpful. So set amount of time, delete the apps, find something else to do with your time. As humans, we cannot live with voids. So if you choose to cut something out and you don't put something in its place, that's just not good. Don't do that. Replace it with something else. And then when you get back on social media, hopefully you'll have cultivated some more discipline, or you can set boundaries with yourself or whatever, so that you still have space for quiet elsewhere in your life. And the last thing, which is tangentially related, I guess, for me it was, read books. Books are, like I said, they move slower than intake off the internet, like word intake. If you're reading posts or reading the news or whatever on the internet, that moves really fast, or you have the potential to move really fast. Books slow you down. So whether you read the book on your phone or you go to the library or to a bookstore and get a real book, I encourage you to do that, because the things that get stirred up in your heart when you're reading good literature are incredible, and they bring you to this state of contemplation that I think is important in a culture of quiet. So read books. Even if you don't like books, even if you're like, I'm not a reader, I don't like them at all, there is something out there for you. There's something out there for you. So if you have a bookish person in your life and you're like, I hate books, but this girl on the internet told me to read a book, so I'm gonna try it. Go to your bookish person and be like, do you have any recommendations? There are books about everything. Find a book and read a book. Okay, so those are the things to cultivate a culture of quiet. Make time alone in prayer, real prayer, good prayer, where you let your longing drive you deeply into the heart of the Father, right? Try to go to daily mass and press, for daily mass's sake, of course, but also while you're there, press into those silences in the liturgy and look at your heart and what's going on in that space. Beauty. Find out what is beautiful to you and make room or force them into your life, because they will quickly crowd out all of the things that are not beautiful and are fluff. They'll get it out, and you'll be able to have these spaces in your life where you encounter beauty and you encounter God through that beauty, and it slows you down. Take a break from social media. I will see you when you get back. And read books. Doesn't even really matter what they're about. Just find books. So, for the last time, I will say cultivating the culture of quiet is something that's really helpful and good for everybody, but really for people who are discerning marriage. It's a great use of your time while you're sitting there longing for your spouse. It's beautiful, beautiful use of your time while you're discerning marriage. So if you liked this video, please subscribe to our Institute channel so you'll be notified whenever any new videos come. Make sure you like this video, make sure you share it with anyone that you think would enjoy it. And until next time, I hope you have a lot of quiet in your life. Bye.